Thank you very much, everyone, for being here this morning. It's a beautiful day, and it's a testament to your dedication to a better world that you're spending part of it with us, learning the ins and outs of being a startlingly effective club board for Rotary. So thanks for your service. Thanks for your morning. And please remember that the importance of your role as a club board member cannot be overstated. It is really true that the future of your club and the future of Rotary is in your hands. So with that in mind, what we're going to cover today is actually outlined in the email that was sent out. We'll look at the communication and participant guidelines for being a board member, the responsibilities of being a board member, how to be effective, and how to manage your club's business. Some of the important policies to have in mind. We will end no later than noon Mountain Time and earlier unless you have a million questions, in which case we'll end at noon. What else do we need to know? We have a few things to say about Zoom protocols. I imagine most of you have been on Zoom a million times already, so this may be repetition for you. Eric, go ahead and put up your Zoom protocol outline for us. Eric is amazing, as you know. Go ahead. I don't know what you've got here, so you should walk us through it.
So, basic Zoom etiquette, just make sure your camera's on, make sure you're muted unless you are ready to talk, and then use the chat to ask questions while other people are talking. We'll have a period at the end where we can have a more open discussion, but during the presentations, if you would just mind using the chat, I will monitor that and bring it up to whoever. Next one, just in case you haven't renamed yourself, the 3 dots above your picture, if you will go there and hit rename and put your club name, please, so we know where you're from. And then use the reactions to raise your hand if you have an immediate question. This is just the chat. You can send it to everyone, or if you have a specific question for someone, you can choose just their name. And then in the top right corner of your screen, you should be able to leave. Sorry, this image isn't great. Exiting full screen so that you can still see the chat bar and things like that. And that's it for Zoom etiquette, Sunny.
Thank you very much, Eric. Your presenters today are Eric, me, and your governor-elect, Richard Haas. I assume you've all met him. Richard, will you say hello?
I just muted myself because I figured Eric was going to send me a nasty gram. Happy Saturday. Yeah. Hopefully everyone's staying cool. It's already, I think, in the 90s in Las Cruces. So it's going to be one of those looking for shade days. Right?
It could be. It's going to be very warm, isn't it? We have 32 of us on this call, which is wonderful. I thank you all for being here, which means, to call your attention to it, that there's more than one screen of us. So to see everyone, you'll need to click the right arrow at the right-hand side of your screen, and that will take you to everyone else's picture. If you do not have your video on, we can't see you. And that means, I don't know if it means you can see us or not. We won't be doing individual introductions, which makes it all the more important that we have your club name and, if possible, your position in your club up on the screen. When you say something to us, when you raise your hand or put something in the chat, let us know where you are and what club position you hold. Are you a PE, president-elect, a treasurer, a secretary, or let's say a board director? BD. Does anyone have any particular questions or intentions for this meeting? Something you want to be sure you get from it that we should know about at the outset? Let's start there. Did any of you come with an agenda in mind, or are you just here to be sponges? I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not seeing any chats. Are we ready to go? Sponge. All right. Thank you, Jen. All right, then. Richard, responsibilities of a board. Will you take it away?
Got it. So, you may have been on your board for a number of years. This may be your first year as a board member. I think sometimes if we're on a board for a while, we kind of forget some of the responsibilities of each board member, and so it's probably a good refresher to go over what some basic responsibilities are for specifically for nonprofit boards. We're a nonprofit. You may have sat on other nonprofits, and each one is as an individual as the board members are individual. They all have different ways of doing things. RI or Rotary International. Okay, here's my pet peeve. If you hear me using an acronym, throw something at me, because Rotary is just absolutely famous for all these initials and acronyms, and you'll be sitting there going, I have no idea. You forget what you're listening to, and you're trying to solve the puzzle without enough vowels in the acronym to figure out what it is. So I will try not to use acronyms, but Rotary International does have guidelines for their board members or for your club board members. And how many have sat on nonprofit boards before? An awful lot of you. So you probably know this stuff, but try to apply it to Rotary. I mean, we don't typically have chief executive officers working for us, or managing executive vice presidents and things like that. That other nonprofit boards do, because there's usually no paid chief executive officer for your Rotary clubs. So here are 10 kind of basic responsibilities for nonprofit boards, and in some of the ideas. First, let me just ask you, what do you think a board does? What's the major responsibility of the board? Any ideas? Well,
You'll have to unmute yourself, of course, if you're going to respond to that question.
Okay, so it's basically managing your club's business. I mean, your club is a business. It handles money, it handles dues, it handles fundraising activities. It's a business, and so one of the responsibilities, of course, is to manage that business, and you'll find out there's a lot of other stuff. One of the first things you want to do is make sure that you understand your organization's, Rotary's mission and purpose, and not only just the mission of Rotary International, but the mission of your club and its purpose. Make sure that you have some type of written mission statement, and that's to keep everybody on track, and use it to guide your activities and events. You can hold an event up to your mission statement as a yardstick and say, well, is this meeting the standards of our club and the direction that we want to head? Another basic responsibility of your board is to ensure, I would say, continuity between, continuity of your leadership. Make sure that you have incoming officers, make sure that you have a line of succession, basically, for your officers. There's a lot of clubs that tend to wait till the last minute and to select these officers, and we just need to make sure that you do that in a timely manner. We'll talk a little bit about when Rotary International expects to see those officers in their database, but it's important to keep up with that. Also, you want to ensure that you've got effective organizational planning. You probably need to look at your club's strategic plan. You may not revise it every year, but you may want to revisit it every year because you'll have a different board coming in each July, and you just want to make sure that everybody understands the strategic plan, where you're headed, where you want to go. If you need to make a right-hand turn, when do you want to make that right-hand turn? And that'll ensure that the club runs a little smoother. One of your other responsibilities is to ensure that your club has adequate resources. And to do that, you need to set fundraising targets and goals and participate in the fund development. You know, are you looking for grants? Are you looking for sponsorships? Are you looking for a fundraising activity? And ensure that your members are up to date in their dues, that your dues structure is adequate to support the activities of your club. Along those same lines, you want to manage your resources effectively. You want to, and part of that is reviewing your annual budget, helping to prepare that annual budget. You should be getting at your regular board meetings, you should be getting financial statements from your secretary and your treasurer, and you want to review those carefully and understand how the money is moving in and out of your club, and is it being used to the betterment of your club and along the wishes of your membership. It's probably also a good idea to either have an audit or have a financial review of your club finances each year. We've been finding that it's harder and harder to find certified audit for nonprofits. So we've actually been trying to do financial reviews every year, and then try to do an audit every third year or so. It just depends on the amount of finances that are moving in and out of your club, and you want to make sure that you keep track of that. You also want to monitor how your club's programs and activities are going. Make sure, again, hold that yardstick up to it and say, are these activities consistent with our mission statement and the direction that we want the clubs to move? You also want to, and Eric's going to like this, but you want to make sure that your club's in good public standing, that it has good PR or public image, PI, so that you can promote your activities within your community. And Rotarians are, to a fault, very humble, and sometimes that goes against what we need to be doing. We really need to be promoting what Rotary does in our communities. And then you want to also, you have a legal responsibility to ensure that your club adheres to ethical integrity and maintains its accountability to the community and also to your membership. You want to establish certain or you want to look at your policies and procedures, and you want to establish, if you do have paid personnel, you know, what the requirements are for those positions. Are there any conflicts of interest that you need to disclose between membership and their businesses, or if you're hiring them for something? You also want to ensure that your club's maintaining its legality to state laws and federal laws, local laws, regulations, you know, as it pertains to nonprofit organizations. And you also want to review your bylaws and articles of incorporation I would say it's probably a good idea just to take a look at them every year. You probably want to make sure that your bylaws are in compliance with the Rotary International guidelines. And finally, you want to, again, you want to look at this line of succession. You want to be looking around for new members to add to your board, to rejuvenate the board. You don't want the same, well, it would be better if you didn't have the same board members each year. I know how tough it is to ask people to serve, but be looking down the line for people to fill in the position when your term is up. And that is kind of the basic responsibilities of board members, of the board. Have I talked long enough?
That's great. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
Full screen, please, Eric. And let me avoid the spotlight for a moment. I'd like to see everyone. There's probably one other unwritten responsibility of a board member, and that is to make this as enjoyable as possible, because if you don't have fun doing this, then nobody else is going to want to do it either. So how are you going to have more board members if you don't make this something people want to do, right? It is both a blessing and a challenge that human beings are involved in the managing of a Rotary Club. And that means that communication and having a meeting be effective are really key. So how many of you, by a show of hands, and I'm going to take a moment and look at both screens, how many of you have been on a Rotary Club board before? First screen, hands. Lots of you. Okay, one more time on the second screen. Board members, most everyone. All right, so you know it can be a challenge, yes? We're going to talk about two pieces to this: communication and having the meeting work well. Communication. Interestingly enough, when people are passionate about an issue, communication sometimes tanks. It's almost because we're so committed that we forget to be calm and respectful and kind in how we speak. And it's so important. We want healthy conflict, because without healthy conflict, we can't trust the results. We can't feel that everyone's included. We can't feel that everyone is heard. And we can't feel that the outcome really represents all of us. So we don't want to stifle anything, but at the same time, we don't want to kill anybody's spirit. So how do we do that? We want to make sure that the ground rules or the guidelines for communicating in the board meeting include being respectful and kind. One way to do that is to insist on I statements. You know, my experience is, or how I'm hearing this is, or what I would suggest is, rather than what a stupid idea, or, you know what I'm saying. Remember that we are all on the same team. Remember that even if that didn't seem like a good idea, or this person is really being a jerk, This person is on the same team. This person is a child of God, and this person deserves the same respect and kindness that you would want extended to you. Be succinct in your communications. Remember that everyone needs an opportunity to speak. And along with that, and this is probably something to remind the entire group at the outset of every meeting, not every thought that is triggered needs to be expressed. Not every story needs to be told. Not every example needs to be voiced. You can get your point across more succinctly sometimes, and people will be grateful when you bite your tongue. So be succinct. Keep the objective of the meeting in mind. Speak to make the objective happen rather than to say everything there is to say about the subject. Am I resonating? Does this make sense to you? Okay. Let me also say two things. One is, don't suppress what needs to be said. If you find yourself concerned about something, be sure it gets expressed, if not in the meeting, then outside the meeting with whoever needs to be spoken to or shared with or cleared up with, because if you don't say what needs to be said, you know what's going to happen. You will let it fester, and then pretty soon you won't be able to speak to that person or even look at that person, and you'll have to cross the street every time you see them. It won't work at all. So make sure that the slate is always squeaky clean, coming from, we're all on the same team. How many of you have read the book, The Four Agreements, or heard of it? It's worth reading. It's a very short book, and it's got some really good ideas. I'll get to the question in this. Is that a question, Ames, or just a letting me know? Ames, are you there?
Just letting you know. I read it.
Thank you. Okay. Good. Thank you. So the four agreements: use your words impeccably. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Really good advice. We should all be following this. And probably the most, well, I don't know. I don't want to say which one's more important. Don't take things personally is at the top of my list, because we tend to do that, don't we? We tend to think it's all about us. Keep in mind, they're not responding to you. Keep in mind that everyone's got their journey, and whatever's happening probably has very little to do with you. And you don't have to take things personally. If you don't, you'll be better off, and so will everyone else. But what I really mean to say is, do not sit on stuff. Do not let things fester. Do not allow your partnership with your fellow board members to suffer. Because if you do that, therein lies disaster. Therein lies the death of your board if you don't maintain your relationship and your partnership. If what's needed is to go out for drinks occasionally, or have a party together, or just take a few minutes in a board meeting and go around the room and say how things are going, that is part of the work of the board, to have a relationship that allows you to do your work together. Am I making sense? Okay. So that's the communication piece. In terms of having the meeting be effective, there are so many books written about effective meetings. We could spend a week on this subject. We won't, you'll be glad to know. But I will tell you that having a meeting work is not just academic, and it's not just a good idea. It's actually pivotal, because as Patrick Lencioni said in his book, Death by Meeting, a bad meeting generates suffering and cynicism. It generates a refusal to go to meetings. It generates a sense that meetings don't matter, that they are ineffective, and that they're going to be bad. Okay, Thank you, George. So having your meeting work not only will forward the work of the club, it will make everyone else come to meetings, and it will make people want to come to meetings in the future. Here's the thing. You don't have to be the person leading the meeting to have the meeting work. Everyone in the meeting has a role to play in having the meeting work. So participants, here are your guidelines. Lead from your seat. Here's how you do it. Number one, confirm yourself for the meeting, show up on time, and be prepared. Read everything there is to read beforehand. Prepare your own pieces of it and bring them with you. Be clear on what wants to happen in the meeting. And if that's not clear, be free to ask at the outset, what are we going to accomplish in this meeting? By when will we be ending this meeting? Just checking. Participate in the meeting to produce the results. So, for example, be succinct. Remember, we talked about that already. Don't tell every story. Synopsize what you need to say, and feel free to jump in and say what you think we've accomplished so far. What I'm hearing us say is, here's where we are, here's where we need to go, here's the issue right now. Listen actively. Don't be doing other stuff during the meeting, like sending texts or checking your emails or updating your calendar. Be present. Write down whatever you promised to do. Make sure everyone in the meeting knows what you're promising to do, and then do it. And if there's anything that comes up in the meeting that doesn't need to get handled in the meeting, can be done another time, save it. So don't get directions to someone's house. Don't make arrangements to deliver something later. Don't schedule things for another time. Don't do that stuff between a couple of people during the meeting. I mean, I'm making sense, right? This is common sense, I think, but it's all stuff that is a gift to everyone who is present. Does anyone have any questions or comments at this point? Do you all see how much power you have as a regular meeting participant to have the meeting work even though you're not leading it? Would you raise your hand or nod or something if you do? Oh, good. That, I think, completes my section, unless you have some suggestions or comments or things to add that I didn't get to. It's awfully quiet out there.
Sonny, George Greenlee.
Yes, George.
I think it helps sometimes, especially in smaller clubs, if you have an agenda, so you know in advance points that need to be covered. You or the district put out a master calendar of things that could be covered at various times of the year, and that's helpful to have in mind for your preparing an agenda. And then, like you said, it's good to be recording the minutes so that people that say they're going to do something, it'll be recalled at the next meeting. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you very much, George. Yes, the master calendar was created primarily for presidents-elect, but it's useful for all board members. It's on the club resources section. Thank you, Eric. It's on the club resources section of the district website. By month, major things, the things, pieces of business that you want to be aware of. And yes, you must have minutes of every meeting. And the minutes don't have to be blow by blow. Somebody said this, somebody said that. They want to be what was covered and what was decided and what actions are being taken and by whom. Anything else I missed? Oh, one other thing. Everyone on the board is invited to consider what items might want to be taken up at the next board meeting. Be sure to get those to the president well in advance of the next board meeting so that they can be included. And if something looks like it's going to be controversial, be sure to take it up with other board members in advance. I'm missing the chats. Anything I should know? Thank you, Eric.
No problem. Yeah, we just the link to the
All
master
right.
calendar is there.
I'm turning it-
Carolyn has her
Super,
hand
thank
raised,
you.
Sunny.
All right, everyone.
Oh, Sunny.
Carolyn,
Yeah,
take
there
it.
you go.
So Sunny, I just wanted to mention that in one of the previous board trainings, there was an interesting comment that if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, which is the same in the medical field, of course. And so I'm pretty cognizant of mentioning, well, somebody wants to do CD for $40,000. We need to write that down in the minutes so that 2 years ago, when it comes due, someone knows that this happened. So I think that our minutes are somewhat lengthy, but I don't want to miss anything. I want my predecessors and to know what happened.
Well, there is a difference between what was decided and somebody's good idea. Do you know what I'm saying? Not every stray thought needs to be captured unless there are ramifications for the future.
Yes, these are all what we voted on.
Oh, okay. You definitely want that. Definitely. Thank you. Every vote wants to be captured. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Yes, go ahead, Freddie. No, you're muted.
No, you just saw my hand gesture. I'm recovering from hand surgery, so I have to do this out of the picture.
I understand. Does anyone have, as we're going through this, experiences of board meetings having gone awry, or places where you can see that this kind of conversation could have made a difference earlier? Everything's going smoothly?
I think sometimes you get, we've had groups come in and request funding, other nonprofits in the community request funding and, sitting not as a president at that time, as a board member, I always felt it was awkward to have to take the vote when they were sitting there right in front of you. It's, usually when you take the vote, there's discussion about the merits of the program or whatever, but I always felt like that was it. For me, I would have asked that group to step outside, or we would contact them in a week and let them know what the board decided. But sometimes it I don't know. And
Yeah,
I think you need to know also how to diffuse those, there are conflicts on boards, right? There
of
people are
course.
people, right? And they're going to have different ideas. And so,
Exactly.
how do you diffuse that, or, foster that team mentality?
Thank you. Those are excellent points, Richard. Two things I would mention. One is that a club can easily design funding guidelines that become a policy of the club. Here's how we fund things. We don't fund individuals, we fund nonprofits. That's one way to do it. You know, we fund only on certain cycles. We fund only after consideration and not while the petitioner is standing in front of us. You know, you can do all of those things. That's kind of useful. The other thing to say is it's always appropriate to table something if it seems as though a discussion is needed at another time. Sandy, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, sometimes we get into the rhythm of just reading our board reports instead of having meaningful discussions. So as we go around the room to each director, we have already submitted our board report for review by our board members. So it's important for the board members to read those reports and also read the minutes from the previous year, the previous month, so that there's not a lot of wasted time. And that comes to the question of how long should a board be, the meeting be?
Yes.
Ours are usually an hour and a half because we have so many board members that have to go through things. But having an efficient board meeting also makes it nice to go to a meeting and know that you're not going to be there for 3 hours talking about nothing. So.
That's a really great point. Have you ever considered using a consent agenda?
Well, we have an agenda. We go through everything. It's just a matter of get to the particular, like whether it's community service or whatever. It's more or less just reading the report rather than bringing up any issues for the board. So.
Right. You know, the consent agenda is one where certain items are placed in bulk for blanket approval. You know, say the minutes, the treasurer's report, and the committee reports, all submitted in advance, all read in advance, are then submitted for approval without discussion. And you say, if the consent agenda is presented for approval, are there any objections? And if there aren't, then you approve them and you move on.
Yeah,
It can save a lot of time, as long as you can count on your board members to have read all that stuff and to be approving them authentically. And then you have a whole board meeting freed up to talk about the things that really need discussion. And this is really useful if you have committee members who have things that really need to come to the board for discussion. I need the board's approval of X, Y, and Z. I need to have the board tell me what to do about A, B, and C, etc.
Sunny?
Yes, Scott.
I would just like to add something that I think for effective meetings that is not the top of the list, and the personal issues that you've talked about, I think are certainly the most important. But one that sometimes gets forgotten is the space, the physical space. I certainly know, since you can see my gray hair, is that I age. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but I find that the space itself can be a detriment to an effective meeting. If not everyone is hearing what's being said and what's being asked of us as a group or individuals, you lose interest reasonably quickly, and I think that needs some attention. It's also a personal, by that I mean I have a responsibility to, if I do have hearing problems, to get myself in the meeting in a space that works for me. But I think there's also an overall responsibility for just the setting up of the meeting to make sure that it's a space that's conducive to good conversation, good communication.
That's absolutely true, Scott. Thank you for mentioning it. I forget that it's pivotal. The environment matters greatly to everything. It affects our quality of life and our ability to be effective. And it affects not just people who have difficulty hearing. It affects our ability to pay attention. It affects our comfort level. And it affects whether we're going to pay attention.
Yes.
So you know, wow, I could spend a day on this one too. If people are hungry, if people can't park, if people are feeling like they haven't been heard, if people can't hear, if people are worried about something else that isn't being addressed, all of those things will affect the ability to get things done. So whoever is running the meeting, make sure you pay attention to the environment and make sure that it is conducive to producing the results you want. Do you have the right materials? Do you have the right people in the meeting? Do you have the meeting set up so people are comfortable? Do you have all of that matters? Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Effective environments. What else? Anybody? If you haven't seen it, the book Death by Meeting is really a wonderful book. It's a little fable and it covers everything quickly and magically. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. What do you think? Eric, administrative responsibilities.
Now we're moving to the visual portion of today's event. This is, I just want to show you how to get to. This is a class that you can also enroll in on the Learning Center, which you get to through My Rotary. And then you go to Learning and Reference, and then down here at the Learning Center. The Learning Center seems to be a little glitchy this morning. I've had to click on it 3 or 4 times this morning to get to the right page. That's fairly common with our Rotary website. But don't let it discourage you. There's good stuff. And then this particular lesson is under club leadership, and it's called Managing Club Business. So this is what we're going to use for a lot of this, but I would encourage you to go back and dig into it deeper and really tackle the stuff that's in here, because it's good stuff, and it's geared specifically towards us as Rotarians. So I'm going to go ahead and hop in. We're going to talk about your administrative responsibilities. Now, these are somewhat geared mostly to the president, secretary, and treasurer, but as a board member, no matter what your role, you have a responsibility to be aware of what's going on in your club, whether it be with monies coming in or out, changes in membership, things like that. You really should have your finger on the pulse of that stuff, so it applies to all of us. And your admin responsibilities really are overseeing your club finances, ensuring that your club invoice is paid to Rotary International. They don't like it when we don't pay them, so you want to make sure that your board is on top of that. Make sure that you're updating your membership list in My Rotary. Ideally, the week that you have a new member, they should go into My Rotary and they should be part of your club so that they can start getting emails that go out. We use at the district level, we use those lists to send out information to people. And if you don't get your members onto those lists, then they are missing out on important information. Make sure your members get the Rotary magazine if you're subscribing to it physically or doing the virtual. Please, please, please follow your reporting requirements. That includes things like district grants, global grants, making sure your club officers and executives are in My Rotary in the appropriate time, making sure you have your correct member list on time so you don't pay extra for members you no longer have. And then it's our job as a board to take our bylaws and adjust them to make them modern. I don't know if you've looked at your club bylaws. Like for the Clovis Club, for instance, we looked at ours and they were 20 years old. And it needed a facelift because the world is very different than it was 20 years ago. So that's an important thing to look at to make sure that, hey, if we have a problem or we're not sure what to do, our bylaws should be up to date and modern so we know what to do now and here. And I would also encourage you, Richard talked about strategic planning and updating your strategic plan. I would also say make sure your club has a strategic plan. And if you don't, reach out to the district and we'll be happy to help you set up a strategic plan for your club And the district has a strategic plan that's on the website that's available for you to download. And it just gives you an idea of what the district is trying to do, and it can help you align your club so that we're all successful. So
Eric, Jen
that's.
has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I can't. Thank you, because I can't see that part now. Jen.
No problem. Yeah, I just wanted to add when you were talking about the bylaws are really, and I think you kind of said this, when things go wrong, it's really important to have kind of like rules of how to handle that. So I didn't have that in my previous club, but just a cautionary, or in this current club that I'm in, but in my previous club in Pennsylvania, we had a Rotary Club member that got into a lawsuit, and it was really messy. And so we needed rules about when they could be a Rotary member or not, when the board, so like just having those rules about when things go wrong, like think through worst case scenario. It's good to have that captured in your bylaws. Hopefully it never happens, but it's good to have it if it does.
Absolutely. Rotarians are humans, people make mistakes, but we do have to have a plan in place at our clubs to deal with those issues should they arise. Any other questions about overall admin responsibilities? All right, well, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you, Richard, then.
Right, I had to find my my little arrow. I've got too many screens on my desk, and it goes and hides if I'm not talking. So I have to find that to unmute myself. So clubs are expected to have certain standards with Rotary International, and Rotary lists these again in the under managing club business in the learnings at the learning center, which is just a wonderful. I mean, you can really get lost in that, in all the resources that Rotary does provide you. But a functioning club really needs to adhere to a few standards, and here they are. I'll just kind of run through them. Right now the standards have changed a little bit. They only require you to meet at least twice a month, and you'll see some flexibility as clubs start to explore that option. The club needs to implement its service projects that address needs in the local community and other countries as well on the global front. This is really important. It needs to keep its membership list current with Rotary's database, and by using My Rotary or a club management system. And that club management system can be Club Runner, or DAC-DB is the other system that's in use. It's that I think DAC-DB is being used by Roswell. I'm not sure there's another club in the district that uses DAC-DB, but that is kind of a West Coast data management system, and there's a lot of clubs that use Club Runner, and the district uses Club Runner as their data management system. And Eric alluded to this a little bit earlier, but conduct its operations that are consistent with the RI Constitution and bylaws and the Rotary Code of Policies. It's probably a good idea as a board to review those every once in a while and just make sure that your club is not doing something that would be in conflict with Rotary International. Sunny alluded to this a little bit earlier, but maintain an environment that's free of harassment and promptly address any allegations of harassment based on the Rotary Code of Policies. You don't want a toxic club, and so part of your responsibility is as a board member is to ensure the health of the club, and that's kind of the mental health of the club. How does the club treat its members? Okay, this is one that you're gonna hear me scream about during the coming year. Pay your dues on time to Rotary International. I do not like to get those little notices from Rotary International that say that our district has clubs that are not paying their dues. So it's important that you try to keep current with your dues. And it's probably a good idea every once in a while to look over the treasurer's shoulder or the secretary's shoulder, whoever's sending that check in, and make sure it gets sent in. There's a few clubs that have already thought that they had sent the check in and it's the, this, and so try to avoid this and make sure you're going this way, and ensure that your dues are paid. Again, it's subscribe to the Rotary magazine. It kind of sounds trivial the way they put it there, but man, what a resource that thing is. I mean, if you get it digitally or physically, it's just a real treasure to have those Rotary magazines. And you might consider, I know we do it a little bit in Las Cruces, is to recycle those magazines into other offices throughout the community. Although COVID kind of did away with the magazines in the doctor's offices, but they'll probably be back one of these days. Let's see what else. Oh, I was going to ask Eric to play some royal music as I cover this next one. Welcome visits by the Assistant Governor, Governor, or any officer of Rotary International. Dun, 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 dun.
Pomp
Yeah.
and circumstance.
Yeah. Along with that, I'm going to give a plug out to our assistant governors. We have got a wonderful class of assistant governors waiting to help you with any question that you have about your club or the district, or if Rotary International you feel is being mean to you. Talk to your assistant governors. They are very, very well trained on where you can get information, how to go about contacting the right people. So lean on your assistant governor, know your assistant governor, and they are just a wonderful resource. I don't know about the governor. I wouldn't pay much attention to what he has to say, but I'm just teasing. But your assistant governors are really there to help you navigate sometimes through this thing called Rotary International that sometimes it gets a little confusing. Make sure that you resolve club disputes in a friendly manner and maintain, cooperative relationships with the district. Don't get antagonistic. If you feel like the district is being too authoritative, then, have a conversation with your assistant governor or call the governor. I mean, my phone number is listed and my email is listed, and you're more than welcome to give me a call. And if I don't pick it up, it's probably because I'm in a meeting. Please leave a message. But again, don't let disputes fester, I guess is my advice. Get everything out in the open and resolve it and move on. You don't need bad history or bad relations between your club members. Okay, here's
Richard, Eric has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Eric.
Eric, you're muted.
It's nothing important. I just felt bad that I didn't have this picture ready when you were talking about the royal treatment. So I didn't want. I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up. So I apologize. I'll be better.
Okay, so one of your other club standards is to rein in your public image.
Richard,
Yeah, I can already see. Yeah, go ahead.
As long as we are pausing, may I ask why there are question marks at the end of your name?
Oh, because I'm going to be the DGE for only
2 more weeks,
a
right?
few more days, right? I got big X's going through the calendar.
Oh, I see.
so.
Okay.
No, don't worry. I'm not bailing out of the airplane. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Just checking. Okay,
all right.
please proceed.
Okay, so here's an important one that sometimes boards overlook is liability insurance that's appropriate for let's say New Mexico or Texas, depending on what geopolitical region you're in. Don't forget about board insurance. You know, I don't know what it's running right now. I think the last time we purchased some, it was $700. You know, I can't remember exactly. I think it depends on the number of board members it's insuring and things like that. But you should contact an insurance agent that's familiar with this type of insurance and see what's appropriate for your board. You need to protect your board if you're having activities in the community. You don't want your board members to be uninsured. And for that-
We do have some board insurance included.
Yeah.
With
in
our
the RI
Rotary-
policy,
With our
yeah.
Rotary insurance. And what you want to make sure happens is that any club activity is approved by your board in order for insurance from Rotary to cover it.
Right.
So there was a hand raised. Did it go down again?
Yeah, because you answered that was my question.
Okay.
Sunny, I just wanted to confirm that.
Okay, thank you. In fact,
Yeah.
when we get to financial management, I think you'll see a little blurb about how much of your dues goes for D&O insurance. We'll get back to that. Thank you, Richard. Please go ahead.
You also want to comply with the request. If you get a request from the RI board to terminate a member who, they're very strong about this, who admits or is convicted of or otherwise found to have engaged in harassment as defined by the Code of Policies. I would say Rotary is very serious about this policy, and they want to ensure that Rotary doesn't have any issues with harassment.
And Richard, this is not in the list, but it's probably good to mention at this point that the board is accountable for strictly enforcing our youth protection policies as well.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah. Yeah. So you should review that. Know that Dick Jones is our youth protection officer for the district. And if you have any questions about youth protection or its policies, then feel free to reach out to Dick and he can walk you through any of those issues. And it's also, well, you know, this is probably a good time to just talk about it. I don't know whether we're going to cover it somewhere else, Sonny, but it's always good for the board to kind of do a what if. You know, if you had a problem, you know, what's your decision tree? Where do you, you know, how do you, you know, if there was a problem with a Ryla camp or something, how do you, you know, where do you go for information? How do you handle that? It's a crisis management kind of decision tree that you should practice every once in a while and just kind of go through it and make sure that you understand who you need to contact and when you need to contact them. And usually it sooner is better than waiting. I like this one. Avoid initiating or maintaining litigation against RI. I think it's just it's almost a little self-serving. It sounds like, don't sue us, right? You know, that's one of the rules. Don't sue us. Not rules, but I mean, but again, you know, if you've got a problem, work it out. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to navigate Rotary, and we've got some wonderful people in the district who have great knowledge about Rotary International and how and who to talk to when you do have a problem. We've had a couple of clubs that needed some help, and the district folks were more than willing to jump in and assist in resolving those disputes with Rotary International. And then address any election complaints using the process established by the RI bylaws. Again, don't let conflicts go on too long. Usually the only complaint that we ever got was that the person elected was never notified that they were a candidate. So don't do that. You know, always make sure that the candidates are that the candidates know that they're candidates, right? You know. And I think that's about it for club standards. Again, kind of at the bottom there, you know, let your assistant governor know if your club isn't meeting some of these standards, and they can give you resources or places to go or people to listen to that can help you with some of these things. Done.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions or comments about any of that for our governor-elect or for any of us? Can we see everybody so we can see questions or hands? Eric, may we have the full screen back, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone, anything? So that was sort of the legalese aspects, if you will, but there's also, oh, Carolyn, yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you for mentioning about having the board approve an activity so that it's covered by the insurance, because we get at our club, we get a lot of requests to do activities in the community that are not always, you know, within our strategic plan sort of thing. So I appreciate you mentioning that if it's not approved, then it's not covered by the insurance.
You're welcome. Yes. Important to remember. Okay, Eric, what is, oh, thank you. A link for the RI Constitution. Anyone else, anything? So once you know the basic legal stuff, remember that there are other things that may be traditions or practices or ways that your club operates that aren't necessarily true for every club. And when you have a requirement to know how your club operates, then the page from the Learning Center gives you links to the RI Constitution and bylaws and the standard Constitution and bylaws for a club. You have already been referred to your own club's bylaws with an admonition to check and make sure that they are up to date. The Constitution we can't mess with much, but the bylaws are yours to update, and it's critical to make sure that they reflect how you actually do your work. The bylaws are particularly important for identifying who your board is, how many people are on your board and who they are, and how you pick them and what they do, and what you want to say about elections and committees and vacancies, things like that. There may be some practices or policies that don't necessarily belong in your bylaws, but that you want to pay attention to as a board. For example, every board should have a conflict of interest policy, a policy that says, you know, we abhor conflicts of interest and here's how we deal with them. You know, we make sure that whenever one arises, we recuse the person involved. We avoid voting in a way that creates even the appearance of a conflict of interest. If you need standard language, we can provide some, or you can find it online. Nonprofit boards generally have that kind of language available. Not only harassment harassment is to be avoided, but to the extent that you can adopt Rotary's diversity, equity, and inclusion policy statement or something like it that affirms your commitment to inclusion, to kindness, to welcoming, creating a welcoming environment in your club, that makes a difference for all Rotarians, because this is about creating a worldwide network of people who are committed to making the world a better place. And we are all always striving to become better Rotarians in that regard. How we treat guests is a part of our culture, and the culture varies greatly from club to club, and we all can do better, I say. You know, do we welcome them immediately when they walk through the door? Do we make sure they're sitting with people and that those people are welcoming them and talking to them? Do we invite them to come back? Do we give them information about Rotary? Do we find out how they found out about us? Do we, you know what I'm saying. We all can do better in that regard. If we are leaving before the speaker speaks, do we let the speaker know that it isn't personal? And do we sit near the door so we can leave unobtrusively? These are unwritten cultural practices that determine who we are as a club. And so understanding how we operate is something we are constantly shaping and something the board has something to say about. Does anyone have other examples that we would want to bring to the fore as we talk about our club culture? Yes, Eric.
Make sure that if there are issues in your club, they stay in the board. We see this too often that a board will get a sensitive topic and by 15 minutes later, the whole club knows. Make sure that you keep your board business inside the board. It's important because you weaken your stance as a board when you share that information just with everybody.
Important point. Yes, thank you. It's really an extension of the principle from nonprofit board management that you don't make public statements about the business of the organization unless you are authorized to do so. So one person is usually the media spokesperson for the organization. And by the same token, someone on the board, usually the board president, speaks for the board to the club on issues of controversy.
That's why every club should have a PI person.
That's right. There are so many reasons why every club should have a PI person. What else? Think about your club's culture for a moment. The board has so much power in this regard. How the board conducts itself and how the board holds the club and conducts the governance of the club will have everything to do with the mood of the club and the experience everyone has of being a Rotarian. So think about what you as board members can do to shape that culture. Is there anything we're leaving out?
I just want to say that what we try to do, it happens more often than not, is to select a deputy for your committee so that the director has a second person that is in charge. So if the director is not available to come to the board meeting, the deputy comes, so that we're not left without a quorum. And that also, it's grooming that second person to become a director, and they get to know about the board and how it works. And the other thing that during the district conference, a past district governor from Canada, I can't remember his name, well, he was our speaker, he was our RI representative. that came to a district conference in Roswell,
Yes,
mentioned that
yes.
not only for the
Rod
board-
Thompson, Eric just put his name in the chat. Thank you, Eric.
Rod Thompson, yes, he says so many people these days have jobs, they're busy, they have commitments, they sometimes can't make a club meeting or as a president or a board meeting. So what the president has done that he's seen is they let one of the ask one of the board members to conduct the club meeting and or conduct the board meeting. So they also get more experience and are groomed for more positions and understand more how things work. So I thought that was brilliant because it also exposes them to, it's not that hard. You know what I mean? Sometimes we feel like, oh, I could never get up there and stand up there and run a meeting for an hour, or I can't run a board meeting, it's too hard, but it's not. And they learn that it's not. And that's by, deepening your bench for future succession. So I think that's
Those are both fantastic ideas. Thank you, Sandy. Everyone, we should steal those right away. Deepening the pool of leadership in every respect and giving people opportunities, because that's all it takes sometimes. Discover which fun it is. In fact, one of the club standards, one of the unwritten club standards for a functioning club is cultivating new leadership. Not just doing the job of governing the club, but cultivating new leadership all the time. There's no reason why everyone in the club can't be providing something, even if it's leading the pledge or sending a greeting card to someone who's absent. We can get everyone involved in making a difference. And that's why people stay in Rotary, is because they're making a difference. So make sure they have a chance to do that. Anything else about club culture and how we operate that we should cover before we move on? Yes, Eric.
Incorporate some humor. Have fun. Don't be the boring board meeting that everybody dreads going to. Have a little bit of fun. We are all volunteers. We all give our time freely to the organization we love. There's no reason we can't let our hair down and have a little bit of fun from time to time. So don't just be a boring stick in the mud board member. Have some fun.
Man, I'd like to underscore that one, if I may. Really, if the worst thing you can do is be predictable, really, because when everything is the same as everything else, when every meeting is more of the same, people will lose interest very quickly. There's so much going on in life. We don't want to just do the same thing over and over again. Have a funny hat meeting, have a clean joke contest, have a where's my next vacation if I could go anywhere sharing meeting. You know what I mean? Just do something different. Be human beings for one another and make it fun. Jeff Weinreich teases me about making things fun, but I'm a big believer, and so is Eric. There's room for fun in Rotary. All right, now I have a question for you. We had originally thought we might take a break, but I think we only have about half an hour or more of material. What do you say we go right through? Do you think we can do that? Okay, I'm getting nods and thumbs up. Let's do it. Let's go right through. Richard, you good with that? Richard, where are you? Okay. Richard, you're on. Reporting requirements. Emily, you don't have your hand up. You're just voting for going through.
Yeah, I didn't know I was gonna have to talk, so now I think that break looks like it's a good thing. All right, here we go.
Okay.
There's certain reports that your clubs need to make sure that you're current on, and if you're not, you're going to get a nasty gram from Rotary International about some of these. So these are some of the things you need to kind of keep on top of as a club and as a board. One of them is, make sure that new and terminated members within 30 days, but no later than July 1 or January 1, in order to receive your correct invoice. If you don't report new or terminated members, your dues invoice is going to be inaccurate. And you're going to, if you're not reporting terminated members, then you're still going to get billed for those members. So try to keep on top of that. This one is one that we're wrestling with right now, but make sure that your officers are reported to Rotary International by February 1st of each year. Your clubs should be electing officers in December and for the coming Rotary year, and so you should have that information uploaded to Rotary International by February 1st of each year. And then make sure that you're following all the reports that are required on foundation funding, whether that be district grants or global grants. Make sure that your reports are turned in on time. I mean, this will get the attention of the district and Rotary quickly if you're lagging behind on some of these reports. And because grants take, they're not done in a day, right? They take a year or maybe even longer. It's important that you turn in those interim reports when they're required. And again, as this is talking about, you can see on your planning calendar when your reports are due and some of those important dates. And then just make sure that your club has a procedure for reporting changes to club member data, right? There's your secretary probably is in charge of that, but just make sure that your club has policies on how do you update that data. And one of the important things is, how do you protect that data as well? You want to make sure that you're adhering to Rotary's policies on membership data protection. And you can report, I think this goes on, talk a little bit about reporting club officers, and it talks about you could do this through My Rotary section on the internet, or you can also report it through your club management system, which we talked a little bit about before. That was through Club Runner or DAC BB. And so it's important that you again get the data to Rotary International and to the district through these various reporting avenues. And I think that's kind of it. You can look at this this thing on reporting requirements in managing your club business segment on the Learning Center. Any questions? Your secretary probably is doing the heavy lifting on reporting requirements, but it's your job as a board member to say, hey, did we file such and such report? Did we turn in the terminated members or the most updated membership list to RI before the July 1 or the January 1 deadlines? You should be asking those questions, for the January deadline in November. Are we current? Do we need to update? And same at, toward the end of the Rotary year, in May and June, you should be making sure that your reports are ready to go in or have gone in.
Some hands raised. Eric, and then Bob Barnard, and then Carrie Quinn.
So Richard's right. Your secretary does the bulk of this, but make sure there are other people in your club who know how to do it. We just went through this in the Clovis Club. Our secretary, who is I call him the rock of our club, became very ill and wasn't able to do any of this stuff. So we had to pick up that slack. And luckily, we have somebody who's been trained as an undersecretary, a deputy secretary. But make sure you know how to do these things because you never know what's going to happen, and you don't want to be left scrambling if something does happen.
Good point. Thank you, Eric. Bob,
So Richard, on the previous page, what is RIBI? Since you-
Rotary International British Isles.
Oh,
They have their own set of rules.
Ah,
Sorry, Richard, I just jumped
no,
in.
no, that's, thanks. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. I don't know all the acronyms.
Right.
I really don't. I mean, it's just like, oh my
It'll
God,
come.
I thought the military was bad and nope, nope, Rotary trumps them.
Harry,
I'm dog sitting and the dog just started barking, sorry.
no
So
problem.
hopefully
We like
she won't
dogs.
interrupt me. Okay, so if a club does not use Club Runner and they're reporting their officers, they do it through RI, but they also have to report it to the district. So how do they input it to the district?
Talk to Donette.
Yeah. Yeah. Have them contact Danette Wagner, our district
'Cause I'm-
secretary.
I'm working on that and I need to know exactly so that I can help the clubs get the stuff in. So
Right.
I'll contact them then. Okay, thanks.
She's the expert on that. Thank
Okay.
you. Good question. Thank you for doing that. Mark. You're muted.
I know, yeah, my picture just jumped up to the top, so I missed the button. So this is a little bit more of a, I guess, procedural question, but we spend a lot of time talking about members who are past due on their dues and making sure we're getting the communication out to them, following the bylaws. We hate to drop someone, tend to
Right.
hang on for a while. So I'm curious, what we've kind of adopted or seen as a best practice in this area.
That's a great question. Let's go
We can
back
spend
to
all morning.
Eric, could we, right, Eric, could we have everybody's face for a minute so we can brainstorm on this one? This is a really good question. What do you do when people are late paying their dues? What works? Eric says that the Clovis Club gives 3 months. Carolyn, what do you do?
We have an enforcer. Her name is Deborah Simon. She gives them a personal phone call and requests to please pay your dues, and darn it, that works like an iron glove in our club.
But I'm not kind about it.
You
How much
find
we
that-
pay them. Yeah.
It helps if you can find the person in your club that people won't say no to. That's true. That's really, really a good system. And often that will work. Sometimes creating a payment plan works. Sometimes just following up is the key, because people need to know that they're missed and that they matter and that we want them to be there. What else? Who else has an idea?
Well, sometimes it's as simple as their credit card didn't get renewed and the member didn't know that. And so that's the easiest fix, is that just like Carol was saying, just call them up and ask them, and they may say, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot about that. That's the simple answer. So that does happen quite a bit.
So it sounded like we just stayed 3 months and did nothing, but our club president will go and deliver an invoice in person to the person who hasn't paid and talk to them about it. And typically that gets it resolved pretty quickly. Or they say, hey, look, I've decided I'm too busy, things like that. But it all comes down to that personal touch. Don't just rely on an email.
No, that's true. And really, we have to keep in mind that if they're not paying their dues, that's really not the issue. The issue is what's going on with their club experience. Why are they holding off, or why are they stepping back, or what is missing for them about their experience in Rotary that would have them even think about not being a Rotarian? Address that and the rest may follow. Mark, is this useful? Matt, is it Mark? It's Mark.
It's Mark. Yeah, no, really appreciate the ideas. It just seems like we spend way too much time during a board meeting going through this. We were talking about the agenda and following, the meeting. Sometimes we're like, man, time is up and we haven't gotten to half the topics because we were, embroiled in some discussion about membership and financials. But my other question is related to corporate members. I know we had, wanted to pilot a program with corporate members, and for whatever reason, it seemed like it was not approved in the Constitution. We were told that it would require a constitutional amendment by the legislative committee and all this. And so I'm just wondering if anybody knows if that's been done, that's been cleared, we're good to go with corporate members.
You're talking about at RI's level?
Right.
Yes, I can speak to that unless Richard, you'd like to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
My understanding now is that we can do whatever we want, basically. Rotary clubs have the ability to make membership available to people of good integrity who want to make a difference in the world. We in Silver City have corporate membership. It is extended to companies basically who have one principal member and up to 5 tertiary members, if you will, or subsidiary members. And one full membership is paid. Everyone else comes when they can and pays for a meal when they come, basically is how it works. It's a wonderful idea. It gets more people involved, more people for your projects, and RI is fine with it.
And those additional members pay full dues to.
They pay the district and RI dues and don't pay meals unless they come and eat.
Right.
So yeah, if you've not paid attention to this, membership, all of the club structures are open to invention now. You've probably heard this. We have passport clubs and alumni clubs and cause-based clubs and clubs that meet just twice a month and clubs that are satellite clubs. And you've heard about all of this, right? We can do so many different things with clubs now. The idea is that there are more ways to participate in Rotary than there have ever been. And the rules are pay your dues and make a difference. That's really the rule. If you have questions about that, we have a great district membership committee, and you can actually ask any of the governor line or district leadership team to assist you with any of this. We have some assistant governors and a lieutenant governor on this call. Carrie, raise your hand. So call on us if you need us. Yes, Anne. You're muted. Yeah.
Yes. Of the corporate members, you said you had up to 5, and then
You can have as many as you want, but yeah, we
Okay.
have 5.
but only one person's name is entered into the Rotary rolls.
Well, it
membership
depends.
rolls?
It depends on how you do it. If
Yeah.
they're paying RI dues, then you enter them all.
Okay. Okay.
So, Anne, we're working on this in Clovis, so we want to set up. We've got a couple of the hospital plateau places like that. We want one principal member, and then we actually want to open it up just every week to see somebody different from that organization. But we're going to structure the fees differently for those corporate members. But that way, every week somebody new can come, somebody can get some experience. But there's no There's no requirement from RI that you dance around anything. It's basically bring people in.
Right.
Do what you can to get people in the door.
I know what Mark was referring to. A while back, there were pilot projects and they were pending approval and a lot of delays, but that's all gone by the wayside now. We're opening it up. And I'm sure you know this, but I'll say it anyway. It was a big breakthrough when they stopped requiring attendance at every single meeting, because that was stopping a lot of people from participating in Rotary. How many of you remember when you were automatically deleted from the rolls if you missed 4 meetings in a row? Does anyone remember that? So we've changed. This is not your grandfather's Rotary, as our governor-elect is fond of saying.
So one of the things I think that's refreshing that Rotary did was get away from some of these, old, club requirements. I think they saw kind of the handwriting on the wall and said, we gotta make these more reactive to what our society is today than when Rotary was started 100+ years ago. So one of the things that our current RI director Vicki Pewitz loves to say is, try something different, and if it doesn't work, then try something else different, right? Don't be afraid to go out and look at something with fresh eyes, and as board members, try something different if something's not working for you. And don't be afraid. Our other favorite thing is, if you see something good, steal it, right? There's nothing in the 4-way test that says you can't borrow somebody's idea on an effective club management or activity or something like that. So don't be afraid to explore new ideas or fresh approaches to things.
I will mention that as we loosen some of the structural requirements around Rotary, it's important as Rotarians, and particularly perhaps as board members, to make sure that there's enough in place to remind people of why they're in Rotary and why it makes a difference. So, for example, if we don't measure attendance and we don't track what people are doing, then are we making sure that they are having fun or having service projects or experiencing that they matter? If we don't build that in and make sure everyone's involved, they're going to leave. People join Rotary for service and for fellowship, and those things need to be in place. Matters not if they get to every meeting, as long as they're doing stuff that they love and having friends. And John, I saw your chat. I don't know if we have much in writing about, okay, Eric's going to get with Willis about documents on corporate memberships. We'll see what we can find. Thank you, John. Thank you, Eric. What else do we need to talk about with regard to this issue? Are we ready to move on?
Anne has a question.
Yeah.
Anne, go ahead.
While we're talking on members,
Yes.
our club secretaries, do they still need to report weekly attendance at
They
a
do
district
not.
level? They do not. Okay.
They do not.
I had heard that. Wanted to confirm it.
Yes.
Thank you.
We invite you to keep track, just because letting people know that we notice makes a difference in whether they show up. But it is no longer an RI or district requirement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. let's talk about our final major topic, financial management. We had a training just last week for club treasurers, so we don't need to go into this in great depth, although I will say, Eric and I are going to walk you through this section of the learning centers managing your club business, because as you know, it's just the treasurer's job to make sure the finances of the club are impeccable. It's the board's responsibility. So all of you will want to know this. Can you all hear me? My internet connection is telling me it's unstable. Can you hear me? Eric, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay.
Yep. I didn't prepare for this, but yes. All right. So the big things that we have are you have club dues, district dues, RI dues, and fees that go to Rotary. This is what keeps Rotary going. One thing to remember in all this is that only 5% of everything that's given to RI stays at RI. Everything else is returned in either global grants or district designated funds. So unlike a lot of nonprofits, the money that you give to Rotary is actually used out in the community and does good. So feel good in giving money to Rotary because it's going to be used in the way you'd hoped.
Well, Eric, that's actually more true of the foundation money than the RI money.
True.
The RI money is actually used to operate RI, but that's also going to us in a way.
So your club dues are every club can set up their own dues structure. It's really used to cover your operating expenses. And your dues are going to be affected by where your club chooses to meet, whether you have brown bag lunches or fancy meals. All of that is club specific, and that's something as a board that you all will set. And can adjust. Our club just voted to raise our dues for the first time in 15 years. To help cover some operational expenses that we're having. So feel free to do that with your board as long as you're being responsible about it. Don't just raise it to raise it, and don't just go crazy. But cover your dues so that the monies that you raise from your fundraising and things like that can go back to your communities, and they're not paying for your operating expenses. Part of what we pay in our dues goes to the district to help the district operate. There's lots of little things that the district has to put money out for, and larger things. And part of your dues goes to the district to help keep the district operating. And then your RI dues. And you pay these per capita twice a year, once in July and once in January. And you're going to get a club invoice that looks like this. And it's going to tell you how much you owe per member, per capita. And this money goes to RI. This is why it's important to make sure that you have your member counts in My Rotary and on the district. Make sure they're accurate, because you're going to pay extra for people who are no longer in your club, or you're going to owe more money the next time around for people who weren't reported properly. We want to make sure that you're paying correctly, and that we keep things simple. And then you pay some fees to RI as well for the Rotary magazine, your council and legislation fees, and any taxes or liability insurance, depending on where you are. So this is money when your club comes to you and says, hey, where do our dues go? You should be able to break out where your money goes to both the district and to RI. And we don't really need that. They really want you to have that magazine subscription. It's full of great information. But if you don't have it, you can't suggest to the nominating committee for governor or challenging a candidate for governor. You can't vote at the district conference, district assembly, and or any authorized club ballot. You can't concur with any proposed legislation from the Council of Legislation. I can talk. Really, if you don't pay for the magazine, you kind of get exiled. So just make sure your magazine stuff is paid for. And it's a great information.
Eric, Carolyn has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Carolyn, go ahead.
So our club is very generous in giving out honorary memberships. Do we pay RI for honorary members? We have 10 standing right now.
No,
No?
no,
Okay.
I don't believe so. Does anyone know for sure? I have never seen a bill for an honorary member.
Okay. See, they're on the roll as
Oh.
an honorary member. I'm just wondering.
Well, check with your treasurer, but I would be surprised. I do not believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Carolyn, but what a great fundraiser idea, right? Yeah. Yeah, make somebody an honorary member and then charge them some dues. So,
Carolyn,
I think
I
that's a
believe,
wretched idea.
Carolyn, I think we pay little because they get the Rotary magazine unless that
oh,
goes to them for free, but I think there's a little bit, but we can ask Dave Hansen.
Yeah.
I can confirm that honorary members are not charged dues at all.
Do they get the magazine?
I
No,
don't think so.
I don't think so.
They
No,
did.
I don't think
I'm not
so.
sure on that point, but I don't think they do.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
So this
Thank
is
you.
from RI. They do not pay dues. I did
Thank
look though that
you, Eric.
you can pay for a magazine subscription for them if you wanted to, or you can have them if they would like to receive it, pay whatever the RI magazine fee is.
Okay,
Right.
great. Thank you.
No problem. So I would really encourage you to go through this portion when you have a chance on the Learning Center. There's a lot of little mini quizzes built in here that you can find out, how your magazine money, your invoices, membership reporting, issues you have with it. And there's a fun little mini quiz in here to kind of test your knowledge on that. But it's not really conducive to a large group. So termination and reinstatement. Go ahead,
A
Sunny.
couple things to add before you move on, Eric.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Going back to the invoice for a moment, I just wanted to point out, I know it's hard to read, but there are fees for both director and officer insurance and liability insurance added into the fees there, just so you know. You can take a look at that on your own invoice. Please know that your invoice payments are considered in arrears after 2 months, after August, basically. So you've got July and August to pay the first invoice. You've got January and February to pay the second of the 2 RI invoices. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One is people get nervous after that, but the other is, particularly with regard to the Rotary citation, you lose eligibility if you pay outside those windows. So that's important to note. The other thing that I didn't know until it became important as a governor is that if your balance is under 250, you won't get hounded. It'll simply get added to your next invoice. So RI doesn't chase after the smaller amounts, just so you know. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this part before we go on?
Sunny,
Yes.
just a reminder, if your dues are not paid up, you're not eligible for district grant money.
Thank you. Very important. Very important. Everyone should know that. Any other questions or comments? And this is, as we mentioned, this is every board member's concern, not just the treasurer. Okay, Eric, take it home.
So this is why it should be every board member's concern, is because there are real ramifications to not paying your dues to RI. They can terminate your club, and you can be reinstated, but it does get tricky. So 4 months after either the 1st of January or the 1st of July, clubs with their unpaid per capita dues will be terminated. That comes from RI. The district has no say in that. Clubs that haven't fulfilled their entire financial responsibility with 150 days of termination will lose their original charter and won't be eligible for reinstatement. So you have 150 days after you've been terminated to get right with RI, or you lose the charter. And charters are not the easiest thing to come by. So we would much rather you be able to preserve that club than just not pay and let it disappear. And if you don't pay for the Rotary magazine, you may be terminated after 180 days of noncompliance. They're really, really proud of that magazine. Reinstatement: any terminated club that wants to be reinstated has to pay all of its obligations to Rotary, including a $30 reinstatement fee per member. So that can really hurt you in big clubs. If you have 100 members, you're out $3,000 to get reinstated within 150 days of those termination. And you have to provide an updated membership list. And the club secretary should contact any club member who doesn't pay their dues within 30 days of when they're due, telling them in writing how much they owe and that they need to pay within 10 days. This is RI's recommendation. Every club is going to do what is best for their club. Basically, it says if you don't pay your dues within 30 days, according to RI, you can drop that member. We obviously don't want to do that. That's drastic. We want to try to keep as many members as possible, but you have the right from RI to drop somebody within or after the 30 days is over. And that's in the Rotary Club Constitution. So paying dues has real ramifications if you choose to not do that. And that's why it's good to know what's going on money-wise, because what happens if your treasurer gets sick? You want to make sure you're on top of these things so that you don't have a crisis, because we don't want to lose any clubs, especially to something like this. And that's really it for financial management. This isn't a treasurer training. We really just want to give you the highlights so you know what to look for, know what to ask at your next board meeting to make sure that you are on top of things. Any questions about terminating or reinstating clubs or members?
Eric,
Sunny?
I'd like to add something that pertains to bylaws and policies with double back, and that is whether you put this in your bylaws or simply have a club policy. Could we have the full screen again, please? You may want to have a club policy regarding leaves of absence, because sometimes the thing that makes a difference is to give people an opportunity to apply to the board for, say, a 6-month leave of absence, and make it available to anyone whose dues are paid up and who has a good reason why not being present, not paying dues, or attending meetings for the next 6 months makes sense. We can offer you suggested language for that. It doesn't have to be in the bylaws. It can be just a policy, but something to make available. Anybody else? Anything to say or add at this point, or ask? We are winding down here.
Sunny,
Yes.
Jen did find the guide to corporate memberships from RI. It's in the chat now.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jen. Yes, Anne, go ahead.
On what you just mentioned,
Leave of absence. Yes.
leave of absence. If there is already a document, could you provide that in the
Yes.
follow-up? And another comment on the honorary membership.
Yes.
It's defined in the standard constitution for clubs.
Thank you. Excellent. Good. Anything else? Final comments? I have some next steps for you. If you have a pencil handy, grab it. First of all, would you right now go to Club Runner and make sure that your board members are all entered as executives for your club in the 2023-24 Rotary year, and preferably with contact information included. And then would you also make sure that your club's goals for next year are entered in Rotary Club Central? And be in touch with your assistant and or lieutenant governor if you want assistance in doing that. This meeting will be, has been recorded, and the recording will be posted on the district website along with the recording for the treasurer's training from last week before the end of the weekend, I trust. So make sure those recordings are widely shared with your board members and call us if you have any questions. Mike has wished us a good weekend and a happy Father's Day. Thank you very much for your happy comments. We really appreciate you. Is there anything else we need to know, everyone? Any last comments or questions? I'm looking at both screens here. I see nothing. Are you ready to go have a great weekend? Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate everything you do for Rotary.
Thank you, Sunny. That was great.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
say
you,
goodbye for
everyone.
now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Eric. Bye, everyone.
Father's Day.
Thank
Thanks for the meeting.
Bye.
Happy Father's Day.